Barbara, thank you so much for joining this conversation on The Future is Calling Us to Greatness.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Barbara, could you please start by just sharing with our viewers or listeners, give us a sense of who you are, like what you're particularly passionate about or interested in. I'll ask some specifics about your work here in a few minutes, but just if you could just help people know who Barbara Jefferson is and how you got to be where you are.
Mm, yes, well, yeah, thank you. That's never an easy question for me to answer because there's so many things that I would love to tell you about. And really so many experiences that have shaped who I am. But I would say that, well, one, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, where I was a young person who was incredibly engaged in school, in sports, in drama, in clubs. I learned from my father that the way to live a happy life was to really be engaged. But with that engagement came awareness of all the issues that were happening in my community, in my family, things like addiction and violence and racism. And I personally experienced, as a queer person of color, I personally experienced a lot of the impacts um, of oppression in society, and that greatly affected my engagement. So I went through a phase, I think, like a lot of young people, of trying to come to terms with the problems, and uh, and I came to identify myself as a solutionary. Um, Through a number of opportunities that I had to put my problem solving skills to work in my community. And so I'm really passionate about being present to the reality of the world that as young people we're inheriting, but the world that we're facing as humanity, and the world that we created for ourselves. And to really putting our gifts, our power into practice towards solutions. Yeah.
Cool, that's great. And actually, since we've got time, so if there's anything else that you want to share, please feel free.
Definitely. Well, also, growing up, there wasn't a lot of education around these things. So it was a very isolating sort of experience. There was no framework or theoretical support to explain what it was that I was experiencing, what it was that I was seeing. And not only that, but why it was really happening. Um, and that was both a crisis and an opportunity. It was something that thrusted myself and I think a lot of other people into being hungry for answers,
Yeah.
and really diving into the darker side of life, if you will. But in that came this incredible collaboration, cooperation, and community of learning that I became a part of. And I think that is also a big thing that I'm passionate about is spaces of like-minded and not so like-minded people coming together to really tackle and get a grasp on what it is that we're really facing. And I'm excited about this series that you have put together for that reason.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. I mean, in some ways, in many ways, it was the work that you and Joshua and others are doing with young people and with sort of the next generations that I find particularly inspiring, both found particularly inspiring and continue to find inspiring because it's, my baby boom generation. We have our responsibility. We have things we need to do. And to the degree that we act with the future in mind, that we truly fall in love with future generations, not just our own kids and grandkids, but actually the kids and grandkids of all species, and then be at work together and learn from the younger generation. So could you share a little bit about some of the work that you do with Generation Waking Up and the programs that you work with and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Generation Waking Up really, really lights me up because, young people are already so aware. A lot of us can recall as a young person having all this awareness and questions, and we saw that things weren't okay and we knew it, but our parents told us to just kind of be quieter in school. We learned how to just pay attention. And so we were kind of taught to not really respond. But we already have everything it takes. We're born into this world with everything it takes to be human, to be alive, and to bring forth like a very sustainable and just society. So getting to connect with other young people that still have that in them already,
Yeah.
and to work together to co-power one another towards these solutions is exciting. So the
Mm-hmm.
work with Generation Waking Up um, is all about raising awareness with young people around issues of sustainability, justice, and human thriving.
Mm-hmm.
We do a number of programs in schools, everything from assemblies that are like multimedia presentations to weekend and week-long trainings where young people get to not only learn a lot more, but get equipped with the skills to start addressing those issues in their communities or campuses or even in their families. And I was so lucky to join Generation Waking Up at a point in my life where I just did not know what to do.
Yeah.
I was a young person. I'm still considered myself to be pretty young. But I connected with Gen Up in my mid to early 20s, and it was so profound to me that all of these young people had no idea what to do, but we were so committed.
Mm-hmm.
We had that deep purpose about us. And so that's what Gen Up, I think, really ignites. It reconnects young people to that sense of purpose and helps them begin to step towards clarity, commitment, and projects that they can actually implement.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, let me say this because this is
Sure.
amazing. This year alone, it's only June, beginning of June now, we've already reached about 3,000 young people.
That's great. Is there a particular part of the world, part of the country that you are invited to more often, or are they sort of all over?
For the most part, it's here in the US,
Mm-hmm.
around the country. The Midwest has been drawing us in closely lately, and the Bay Area, where we are based, the
Mm-hmm.
West Coast is definitely where a large part of our work happens. But we've been in places like Dubai, New Zealand, Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah, so we do get invited to travel a bit further from time to time as well.
Wow, that's great. Could you, because I don't know myself, Joshua and I haven't talked about it, and I haven't talked with you about it yet. I'd love to hear a little bit more in terms of what's sort of the heart, the soul of the message that you communicate to young people and how you train them.
Yeah. Well, our mission is really igniting young people to bring forth a thriving, just, and sustainable world. And part of that is, the awareness piece. The other part of that is, I think, our core message, and that is there is a unique role that you have to play. And the future is calling you to that. Your future is calling you to that, but the future of humanity is calling you to be yourself fully and connect that to the solutions that are needed.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm just taking notes because what it reminds me is a way that Connie and I language this a lot is that there is something that's available to us as human beings when we get in touch with our own legacy consciousness, where we get in touch with and really, meditate on and give some energy to what is, how can our unique gifts and limitations be a blessing to the world, be a contribution to the future such that long after we've died, that work still ripples out in some way. And a lot of young people, in my experience, actually a lot of old people too, but especially young people, don't necessarily have legacy consciousness because they're not thinking about their death. They're not thinking about sort of their mortality. They're not thinking about their legacy. They're just living life fully, as you do in your teens and 20s often. and dealing with the challenges of everyday life. And so it sounds like the work that you all are doing is really helping young people to get in touch with their own sense of legacy consciousness and their own sense of where their full self-expression can further that in healthy
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah, that's one of the big questions that we pose in our work is what will our legacy be? And as I dig into that question, I realize that it also pulls at the question of where is our power? And for some, the question of what will our legacy be is difficult or even impossible to wrap our heads around because we don't necessarily have a sense of our own power, or maybe in our circumstances in life, we actually don't have very much power that we are granted by society.
Mm,
So that's also another area that we need to dig into more is this sense of what is our power?
yeah.
Where are the gifts that we have? Where are the opportunities that are available to us? And how can we leverage those, whatever they may be? How can we see that as our opportunity for leadership?
That's awesome. Do you all work with other organizations? Do you connect or sometimes synergize with other organizations with a similar sense of mission or purpose?
Definitely. Actually, right now we're gearing up for a 3-day training here in Oakland. We're partnering with United Roots Oakland, which is a youth serving multimedia organization. They support youth in creating videos, recording music, just putting their creativity to use in that way,
Mm-hmm.
as well as Youth Seed, which is an organization that supports young people in social entrepreneurship. So they take low income youth or youth from usually underserved communities and give them business training and help them put their projects into action. So we'll be partnering with both of them for this upcoming training. But in general, we like to collaborate and partner whenever there's opportunity. The richness that is available to us in doing that is one that I think holds the most power for transformation.
Yeah.
And we're all in this together. We're all playing a different part. So as often as we can really see that and move into that space, we do.
Awesome. Awesome. A thought just occurred to me. Where do you find your own sort of sources of inspiration? Like what is it that nourishes and feeds your soul, your spirit, your vitality, so that you can do this work in the world and do it from a place of? Did you say possibilitarian? I forget what was the name you used.
Solutionary.
Solutionary. Yes, I like that even better. Hold on,
Yeah.
I got to write that down. Solutionary. So yeah. Where do you find what feeds and nourishes you in your own walk and in your own work?
Hmm. That's a good question, and one that I'm asking myself more. I think yeah, there's a lot of things that come into that. There's a deep sense within myself, a place that I'm able to connect with that is my own consciousness, is my own moral compass, is my own sense of right and wrong. And I think my connection to that place is first and foremost where I draw my strength and resilience. And from there, looking outward at the folks whose legacies I'm just in awe and honor of.
Yeah.
My family in particular, my great grandmother, her name is Ruth Washington, Native American, beautiful woman who um, just brought up a family in so much love despite the history and the legacy of destruction of her culture. I think that being able to see the small things in great people in small ways, I think those everyday moments are some of the things that really feed me. And then the rebels. Like I can't get enough of the people who they speak their mind, whether it makes us feel good or not. The folks who are willing to push the boundaries and the
Huh.
envelope in the name of love,
Yeah.
in the name of love. That gets my goosebumps going, for sure. And music.
Really? What kind of music?
Everything from like wild, like southern trap music, like just heavy bass, stuff that makes my body just like get wild. World music too, anything with a lot of percussion and bass. And I
Hmm.
used to play the trumpet, so I love brass. I'm starting to get a little bit more into jazz and let that speak to me. But music has a way of letting me let go of
Yeah.
all the worry and just reconnect to the beauty, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome. I know you've done some training with people that are near and dear to my heart. My two main mentors in my life, well, there are several others too, but the two main ones are Joanna Macy and Thomas Berry, who just died a few years ago. And so, say a little bit about, if you would, about some of the training that you've done, or some of the training that you do, the things that you're involved in. Yeah, in addition to
Yeah,
the Jenna.
yeah, I love me some Joanna Macy. I definitely do. I'm actually today going to be heading out to lead a work that reconnects session for the 350 Fossil Free Fellowship training. And I've moved. My personal life has been transformed by the work that reconnects and the body of work that Joanna has been stewarding. And I believe in it so deeply, the power of reconnecting us to our human responses. Like I said before, as children, we were so aware of them. You know, we had zero filters, you know. And the work that reconnects for me brings me back to that place where emotions are welcomed, where the truth telling is honored,
Yes.
and where we can also connect with that legacy consciousness that you were speaking to. So that I've trained with Joanna Macy as a part of a People of Color cohort. She's been um, dedicating a lot of her work to new groups of people of color to facilitate it.
Mm.
So I've been trained with that and have been leading sessions for youth, but also leading sessions for people of color in community as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I first began training with Joanna in the late 1980s, and did I think a 10-day training and then several weekends, and so it was a daddy's pure joy 2 years ago or 3 years ago when I think 2 years ago, when my daughter Miriam, who I know you know,
mm-hmm.
when she spent a week and trained with Joanna, it was to have my own daughter who shares just so many of my deepest values also be able to be blessed by and trained by Joanna was just one of the highlights of my life, actually.
Mm. You know, I have a similar feeling, the opposite though. I brought my mom
Oh, wow.
and two of my aunts to a Work That Reconnects workshop. And that for me was that same feeling of like my family, the people that I love the most are being touched by the work that I know the power of this. And we were able to share some of the deepest moments we've ever shared.
I have no doubt.
Yeah, it was yeah, it
Wow.
means so much to me. And I think that's another driving force for me is my family.
Yeah.
When every day I ask myself, is my work actually making an impact in my family?
Mm.
And if
Wow, what a
not,
great question.
you know, how much of what I'm investing in everyone else should I be investing in my family, you know?
That's a beautiful thought. I feel just a twinge of sting that I have not attended to that as deeply or as carefully as I could. So thank you. This is a conversation that I think is making a difference, especially because in another 6 days I'm going to be seeing my whole family because I'm going to be performing the wedding of my niece, and so the whole family is getting together. Cool. Well, that's awesome. And it's really great that you were able to share and that you do bring this work that you do in the world into your, with your family as well. I noticed that it says you're accountable. I'm looking on the webpage. It says you're accountable for the Wake Up program. What are the various programs that Gen Up has, and what is that one specifically about?
Yeah, so right now I'll share more about the Wake Up, but the Wake Up is our flagship program. We also have a new program that we've been rolling out that's called Wiser Together. That's an event that happens in community. That's an intergenerational conversation. We also do day-long leadership trainings in schools. So we bring young people together to help them kick off new clubs or projects around sustainability and social justice. We do smaller classroom presentations or presentations at, say, conferences. And then, as I spoke to before, our longer trainings.
Yeah.
A new program that everyone should check out is our Thrive Fellowship. This is our first year kicking off a 1 year program for young people who want to establish a project in their community. And we set them up with a year of mentorship, coaches, webinars, and the tools that they need to actually make it happen and implement it. And we'll be kicking that off in August. So, yeah. But the wake up is where we capture it all. It's where we tell the story of our generation, where we question what our legacy will be, and where we start to look at the root causes and the opportunities ahead of us. So it's about a 3 hour interactive program set up with videos, activities, dialogue, reflection time, and people go through 4 questions. Who are we as a generation and as individuals? Where are we? Like, what's the state of the world right now? If we were all to just take a walk around the planet, what would we really see? What has to change? And what's possible for the future? And then what do we do? What's that one small, sweet step that we can take towards a thriving, just, and sustainable world? And that's a lot to do in a short period of time. But with young people, it's dynamic, it's quick, and we arrive at a place of recognizing that we do have some power, and that we do have that unique contribution, and that's what the Wake Up's about.
That's fabulous. How do you all fund yourself? Like if there's somebody watching or listening to this that says, "Damn, this is exciting. I want to help make sure you guys, have the money that you need." How are you supported?
Well, that person should go straight to the website and click on donate. And a lot of our funding actually does come through that way. We have a monthly donor program called our Game Changers program, where people can make small donations, anywhere from $5 to $100 a month or more. We do house parties where we bring people together to learn about what we're up to that year. But through a lot of individual donors, as well as our partnering organization, the Pachamama Alliance. A lot of our work has been adapted from the work that they've created over the last couple of decades. And so they have been a great sponsor for us in the past. But we're really looking ahead at how to grow ourselves, how to grow our reach, and how to grow that body of donors. So we are always open to suggestions for how to create a broader reach. We've also started writing grants as well, so that's been able to fund more of our fellowship training and our Wake Up program as well.
Cool.
We get creative too.
How so?
Well, more and more crowdfunding is taking off, and so we'll utilize that from time to time. We're just kicking one off to raise money for scholarships for a training, food donations from grocery stores or from farmers markets, things like that, where we are just a little bit more resourceful.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. One of the things, going back to our mutual appreciation for the work that reconnects and Joanna Macy and that sort of thing, Connie and I, as you probably know, travel all over North America speaking in churches and colleges. And this year we're supporting the Great March for Climate Action from Los Angeles to D.C. And the main way we support ourselves is we sell books and DVDs at the back of the room after our presentations. And this year we're selling, in addition to our own DVDs and my book, Thank God for Evolution, we're also selling what we consider just to be the cream of the crop, just the best of the best in terms of climate change and peak oil and how to hold this stuff in a way that keeps people inspired. And Joanna's book, Active Hope, is actually the co-author. I'm blanking on his name. Chris. Chris Johnston, I think. Yeah. At any rate, their book, Act of Hope, is our best-selling book. More people buy that than any other thing that we sell, so it keeps us in money because it keeps us in gas and food money. What it does is it really gives people a sense that, how to honor our despair, our fear, our anger, how to feel our connection with all of life and to the future generations, and then how to be inspired to be in action in the face of that. Just doing one little thing. That's why I really appreciated when you were talking about your training, is that you really, you bring it down to what's the one, what do you say, sweet step or something like that, that you can do. Because I think that's so vital for maintaining a healthy, hopeful, but not pie in the sky hopeful, but grounded, active hope in the face of some pretty scary stuff that we're all looking at now.
Hmm. Yeah, I came into my own type of work that reconnects when I was in college. I was actually on my way to school for engineering, and at the last minute had this sort of crisis, a realization that I wasn't in touch with myself, and that by going to study engineering, I was going to get nowhere, I wasn't going to get any closer to that.
Mm.
And so I decided to go to acting school. And in acting school, I was able to express and be in touch with all of those things that the work that reconnects allows you to be in touch with. And at the time, I was, at the end of my teenage years, I was going through the depression that a lot of us do as we're leaving home and figuring ourselves out. And I had a lot of pent up anger, frustration, sadness, confusion, apathy, you name it. And I was able to give voice to those. I was able to let them flow freely in this acting studio, and I came back to life.
Wow.
And so through the work that reconnects, we are able to really do that in ways that are safe, in ways, and also in ways that really honor those things.
Yeah.
They're what make us human.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us working really hard in the ways that we do, we are bombarded by horrific facts and images and fear of our future. And a lot of my friends are saying, maybe I should just use my privilege and go move to a different country and just get away from it all. But we need everybody, right? We need everyone. So we need a way to be able to deal with those things because it's so overwhelming. And in a lot of cases, it's why a lot of people get burned out, it overwhelmed and go back to a safe and easy, way of living. I don't know if there is really a safe and easy way of living these days, but but we need things like the work that reconnects. We need them.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
How do you, like, if you were to give some advice or some heart coaching to, say, someone my age, I'm 55, or somebody in their late 40s or 50s or early 60s that, that might be feeling just the weight of this awesome sense that we are at this terrifying time in human history, especially given climate change, but some of the other big problems as well. What would you say to somebody, not a young person, but somebody sort of in middle age, that would be encouraging or supporting or in some way helpful?
Mm. I'm going to have to steal the words of Van Jones in this case.
Please do.
Someone asked him a similar question at a talk that I went to, and he said, "You already know. The answer is inside of you. There's that voice that's been speaking to you that maybe you haven't been listening as closely to, but it's there, and it knows exactly what you need to be doing. There's something that has been hooking, tugging at you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't heard it for a while, it's time to spend some quiet time and listen, because no one knows, no one can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I could give you some suggestions that I think would work for me, but we're all in different circumstances, and so it's really about that voice within you.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand. On the other hand, the perspective of others who are not like you are so needed. And as we are doing this work, you know, it's really good for us. It's strengthening for us to connect with others who are doing similar work and for us to be sharpening each other. But often that kind of gets us into these spaces of monoculture, if you will. And we have to take the time to go and see what's happening in the African American community. What are those voices saying? What's happening in the young folks? What are they saying? What's happening with even the elders in the homes that we've kind of tucked away? What voice is there? You know, what perspectives are there? What's happening on the reservation right now? What are they saying about the future in what's needed right now? So I think that in addition to that voice that's within us, we have to also be coming together to hear the voices that are all around us because we all have a part to play and we all have a piece of wisdom that's really necessary.
Yeah, that's great. That's a fabulous response. It's actually, it's you just articulated what I would, and I don't mean this in any patronizing way, but wisdom beyond your years. I'm just really delighted with how you just responded. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to share around climate change specifically? Just sort of in general, to anybody who would be watching or listening in on this conversation, what wisdom or just what heart, advice would you share in addition to what you've already been sharing?
Yeah, this is kind of along the same lines, and I've been trying to get clear on this. I have a sense, I suspect that at the core, at the heart of what climate change is aiming to fight against are the same targets of a lot of other movements. Like if we actually get down to the root of it, we're talking about things like capitalism, colonialism. You know, we're talking about things like greed and and oppression that have been played out in certain ways with the environment, as we see that people have so much power, you know, to be able to destroy things. But those places that they've destroyed, the deforestation, that's also a social justice issue.
Yeah.
That's also a food justice issue, you know? And I think that at this point, we have an incredible opportunity to reconnect to those deep values that we're all trying to steward and to come together. Because our fights right now are separate and we're competing in a sense. Right now, it's like, oh, climate change is the biggest, most important thing happening to all of humanity. But you go to a different community and they're saying a different thing. But we're all fighting against very similar things. So I'm terrified by climate change. And I'm also aware that there isn't going to be one great tornado that sweeps the whole planet and wipes us all out. Who is going to be impacted? You know, who's going to have the power to move to the top of the hill when the waters rise? So those things come back to those social justice issues, you know? And so I think I'm really aiming for the intersection. I think that the greatest work that can be done for all of us is at the intersection of not only saving the life, the biodiversity, the beauty of this planet, but to see humans as an intrinsic part of that. And so.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. I love it. Anything else that you haven't shared that you're particularly passionate about or would love to share in this conversation? Oh, actually, before you even say that. Actually, no. Let me go with that. But then there's a question that Connie always likes to me to ask, and so I'll do that afterwards. But anything that you're particularly committed to or passionate about, or anything else that you'd like to share in addition to what you've already shared in this conversation?
Yeah. Well, out of what I was just saying, I realized that cultural competency and diversity and the ability to be a multicultural, committed movement is not just an intention that you can set. You know, it's work, it's a process. It requires a lot of learning and things like that. So I've had this new sort of inspiration to dive deeply into that and to be a solution in that way. So I'm passionate about that, about diversity and inclusion. I'm really passionate about queer, the queer community and queer identity. I just think that there are so many evolutionary things that are happening there that are under the radar, by and large, that are, yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I don't know what
Yeah,
you
well,
mean.
when it comes to the world views of the dominant culture that I think has brought us to where we are now in terms of climate change and in terms of vast inequalities, a lot of the worldviews are situated around dichotomies and dualities and a zero sum game. And the queer community has been addressing those things through sexuality, not necessarily in terms of economics, but through sexuality and through gender identity. And you have groups like
Wicked
that
transcendent.
Wicked Transcendent, which is this group of people who are recognizing that the duality of man and woman, right and wrong, winner, loser, that that's not serving us. And they realize that as a human being, there's so much more than that. And they've stepped into that with their full identity as their gender or as their sexuality. And yeah, I identify strongly with that group, and I think that there's so much we can all be learning from all of our ability to do that. So,
Interesting. Well, it's funny because this reminds me that when I was on your Generation Waking Up staff, reading a little bio there, you used a gender neutral pronoun that I had never seen. I had to actually go online and search it and find out what it means because it was my first encounter with it.
hmm
So cool.
yeah, I prefer to use the gender neutral pronoun for that reason. I took a class and there was this invitation and request that everyone during the whole class use gender neutral pronouns so that we could start to challenge um, how unnecessary it was for us to be identifying if someone was a man or a woman all the time. We don't identify their sexuality whenever we mention them, but for some reason we feel the need to identify their gender. And that just like shattered all these old worldviews for me. And in my own identification as a gender neutral person, um, yeah, those pronouns just fit me so well.
Cool.
I grew up questioning, like, am I a man? Am I a woman? But I have so many masculine traits, but I have so many feminine traits. What am I? So I like to walk on the wild side and not have to answer that question.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's again one of those places where we keep finding in culture, at least in 20th and 21st century, sort of stretching beyond what has been thought or assumed or given to be the norm. And this is where I find myself learning from your generation because it's sort of it's new territory for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
So here's the question that Connie always wants me to ask folks, which is if you had to, not had to, if you were able to have a dinner conversation or, glass of wine or whatever, but some kind of like where you're sharing a meal or sharing a drink and having a good conversation with any three people in human history, who would those be and why?
Hmm.
Well, and it could be even somebody else alive today, but who'd be the three people that you would, and not necessarily that all of you would be together at the same time. It could be that, like a dinner party, and the three people you'd love to hear them interact with each other, or it could be just one on one. But yeah,
Mm. Wow. So the first person that came to mind would be my ancestor, whose name I do not know, or the number of ancestors, I guess, but one of my ancestors who traveled by boat to the US shackled as a slave. I would want to sit down with them and how they did it,
Yeah.
how they chose life in that time.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah. Second, I would, he's alive, but I've really been wanting to go on a hike with Van Jones, and I would just love for him to also be at the table, um, as well. And third, I don't even know. I would want everyone at the table. I'm gonna say that my last person.
Well, we could imagine that it happens 10 times, and you're just telling me about the third, but there's others too.
Yeah. No, I would also want my great grandmother, who I mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
Her her wisdom and spirit.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. And just that lineage, the females of my Blackfoot and Cherokee lineage, I would want one of the female medicine women to be at the table as well.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Barbara, thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation, and I so deeply honor you and the work you're doing. And if people want to learn more, is there any place other than the Generation Waking Up website that you would refer them to?
That's the best place to learn about Generation Waking Up. You can also learn about the work that reconnects at theworkthatreconnects.org. To just learn more about me, you could email me and we could set up a time to talk more. But yeah, my email is barbara@generationwakingup.org.
Cool. Cool. Great. Well, when I see my daughter, I'll tell her you said hi, and thanks again for your work.
Please do, yes, and have a great time at the family wedding.
I will.
Yeah,
Thanks. Okay.
thank you.
Uh huh. Bye bye.
Bye.